We're often told that to achieve our goals, we just have to break them down into small, actionable steps. But how do we do that? I've never found the advice, just do it, to be particularly helpful, so let's have a closer look. When it comes to breaking down a goal, we're trying to think of the actions we need to take or do in order to get from where we are to where we want to be. Obviously, the specific tasks are really going to depend on what type of goal we're working on, and also on the outcome that we want, but good goal action steps all have two main features. Their actions and their steps. Stay with me, we're going to elaborate on this just a little bit more because that also isn't all that helpful. Like, yes, of course, action steps are actions and are steps, but unpacking that a little bit further, thinking about the action portion of an action step, this is about doing something. In particular, something that we, as the individual who is trying to achieve our goals, can do. When breaking down a goal into tasks that are actionable, what I really like to think about is, could I wake up and just decide to do this? For instance, I can wake up and decide to go for a walk, but I can't necessarily decide to wake up and weigh 20 pounds lighter. The weighing 20 pounds lighter is an outcome that I might be targeting, whereas going for a walk is the action step that I can break my goal down into. When it comes to breaking down our goals and writing out these action steps we need to take, what can be really powerful is starting each of them with a doing word, or a verb. For instance, if one of my goals is to declutter my digital space, and I want to focus in particular on my very large collection of photos and screenshots, then writing something like photos or screenshots down on my list of things to do to work on my goal isn't really going to be all that helpful. It doesn't tell me what I need to do in order to check that off. Instead, writing something like sort the folders of photos or declutter the photos, because the word sort and the word declutter are both verbs. They're things that I can do, as opposed to just general ideas that don't really come with a lot of instructions. The second part of action steps though is steps, and this one is also really important to making sure we're breaking down our goal in a way that is going to be easier for us to get things done. When we say steps here, what we really mean is something small. If we think about running a marathon, not that I'm going to be doing that anytime soon, but stay with me, every marathon starts with a single step. And that's what we want to do with our goals as well. We want to make those actions that we're breaking it down into really small, bite-sized things so that they feel achievable. Especially for those goals that are really big and are quite far removed from where we are currently, breaking it down into small, tangible, little bite-sized pieces means that we can just check those off one after the other and get closer to where we want to go. When I'm breaking down my goals and thinking about the action steps that I need to take, I try and make sure that each individual action step is only going to take me somewhere between 2 to 10 minutes. If it's going to take longer than that, then it's probably not a step, it's probably more of a multi-step project. A very common pitfall when it comes to planning out our goals, breaking them down into actionable plans, is not breaking them down far enough. We end up with a list of things that we need to do, which are actually populated with a bunch of projects rather than individual steps to take. We want our list to be full of tasks, not projects. Individual steps, not multi-step processes. You can of course organize your list so that you have a heading that is a project and then individual tasks underneath that. I do that a lot of the time because it just helps to organize my thinking. But the stuff that you're checking off on day to day, week to week, those should be individual items. Stuff that can be done in 2 to 10 minutes. Another issue, which is very closely related to not breaking things down far enough, is breaking them down too much and ending up with a list that's 5 miles long of all of these things that we need to get done because things are just like too bite-sized. For instance, if we were to write down make the bed in our planner, technically speaking that is a multi-step process and could be thought of as a project. We could have the steps of remove the covers from my body, get out of the bed, put the covers back on to the bed, neaten up the sheets, fluff the pillows, all of these individual tiny things, but I'm not going to write all of those out on my daily task list for something that realistically would just itself take 2 minutes. Yes, it is a multi-step process, but if I write out every single tiny task associated with that onto my to-do list for the day is going to get really overwhelming really quickly. And we don't want that to happen to our goals. If we make it too overwhelming by keeping those action steps too large, That's not going to be great. But we can also make it overwhelming by breaking things down into steps that are just too small, which means we have to write them all out and do them all and check them all off, and we could have just saved some time by writing it in a simpler way. Now, as we know that we need to break our goals down into action steps, so they need to be doable, actionable, and also steps, so small enough that they're not too overwhelming, how do we actually figure out what action steps are going to be relevant for our goal? There are 4 main techniques that I like to use here. We're going to look at them in the order that I like to use them in. The first one being brainstorming, just getting anything and everything out of my head as related to the goal, mainly because if it's a goal that I'm really serious about, I've probably been thinking about this for a while, I might have seen some research pieces on the internet, I have some idea about what I might need to do, and getting those things out of my head and onto paper means that I can start to sort through which ones are actually going to be useful to take me where I want to go. When it comes to that brainstorming process, I'll either do it as a list, because it's nice and easy just to write one idea after the other, or I'll do it as a mind map, which makes it easier to connect ideas together. Either of these styles can be really useful, and I often will use both, mainly because they're suited for different things. The list is easier to write out, but doesn't necessarily allow one thought to flow onto another quite as easily, whereas a mind map really lets you link ideas and get deeper with things, but can be a little bit harder to use after the fact. The second technique though I like to use is research. In particular, researching other people that have been able to achieve the thing I want to achieve and what they did to get there. This doesn't necessarily mean I need to copy their plan 100%, and there are a lot of different ways to do pretty much anything, so you're gonna get some varying information. But one of the biggest things to watch out for here is not letting research take up all our time and stop us from taking action on the goals we want to go after. For a lot of my goals, the first step that I'll write down for me to actually do to work on the goal is a research step, but I'll make sure that I time restrict that so I don't let it go on forever. Instead of just research, insert goal here, it's do 20 minutes of research for the goal. By giving myself that time restriction, not only will I stay on task better, but it also means that I can get on and write down other action steps and take other actions that'll actually get me closer to where I want to go. The third technique is considering action steps in categories, and in particular, I use categories based on frequency or time. Depending on the type of goal we're working on, sometimes there's going to be things we need to do repeatedly, whether they be daily, weekly, monthly, annually. Very much depends on the scope of the goal you're looking at, but if we consider a goal that I once had, which was establishing a YouTube channel, which obviously has happened, one of the repeated actions that I needed to take there was producing video content. I had to think about how often do I want to do that. I decided to go with a bi-weekly frequency, or 2 times a week for videos, and thus one of the action steps that I had was 2 times a week, sitting down, filming, editing, producing this content. Thinking about a health-related goal though, maybe a repeated action step for that could be daily exercise, or weekly meal planning and prepping. Of course, not all goal action steps are going to be repeated, sometimes they're one-off things as well, and this is also something that I'll consider. What one-off things do I need to do or take action on in order to achieve the goal that I've set for myself? By structuring my thinking in this way, it can also help me get realistic about how much time I have to dedicate to the goal, and whether the way I'm planning on working on it actually aligns with how much time I have in reality. If the way that I'm deciding to work on a goal means that I have a laundry list of tasks that I need to do every single day, otherwise it won't work, then possibly that's not going to be the best way forward for me. The fourth technique though, when it comes to figuring out these action steps and breaking the goal down, is what I call backwards mapping. This is essentially taking the outcome that you want from a goal and considering the thing that has to happen right before you get to that endpoint. What's the thing that you need to do or have happen right before you achieve that goal? Once you know what that is, what's the thing that has to happen right before that? And the thing that happens right before that one? Essentially, we're taking that final outcome that we're striving towards and working our way backwards to consider all of the little milestones and things that need to happen before we get to there. The techniques of brainstorming, research, categorized thinking, and backwards mapping can be so super helpful for making sure that you end up with a robust plan for your goal. You've broken it down into those small, actionable things that you need to do, and thus you can go and take action and actually achieve the things you set for yourself. If you liked this video and you want even more help on how to set, plan, and achieve your goals, then I would love to invite you over to Epic Goals. The self-paced course guides you through all aspects of goal setting, planning, and getting, starting with brainstorming your goals, figuring out what you want to work on, planning a robust action plan that can actually be achieved, making things happen, and reflecting on your progress so that you can make more. That one's linked in the description box below if you wanted to check it out and find out more information. But we'd love to have you with us. While breaking down a goal is a fundamental step in my planning process, there are some steps that come before this that I also deem essential. To see what those are and a layout that captures all of that information, then this video is the next one to check out. That's a great summary of my overall goal planning process, so click or tap on that one and I'll see you over there.